The personal story that I'll be sharing with you guys today is about the time that I quit wrestling my senior year of high school. But before I fully get started, I just wanted to ask you guys if there was ever a time that you quit something that you cared about, that you were passionate about, just to give you some perspective and just kind of reflect on how it made you feel, whether it be good or bad. But wrestling, I started my freshman year of high school right after our football season had ended. From the football team, there were about 3 or 4 of us that had joined the wrestling team. 2 of them who I was super close with, my friend Spencer and my friend Austin, who will become relevant later on. They were just my 2 closest friends in high school, and then they also happened to wrestle with me. Our freshman year, all of us, we did okay. We didn't do amazing considering we were new to the sport, but it was something that we enjoyed, something that we all knew we wanted to continue. But as far as wrestling, something particular about wrestling, I'm sure other sports as well, to actually get good, you develop your skills on the off season. So you learn new things during season, but the off season is where you really get better. It's where you go to extra tournaments, other practices, other camps. So it's really where you get better. So we did that on our off season from our freshman to sophomore season. And we all got a little bit better. We didn't do amazing our sophomore year, but you definitely could see our progression as time went on. So fast forward to our junior season, that's when I did pretty good. I made it to Masters, which is the tournament before state. And at my school, no one had ever qualified for the state meet. So in my head, it was my plan to qualify for the state meet for the first time ever in our school history. So at that Masters meet, I went 0-2, which means I lost both my matches. I didn't do well. But I was just happy to make it there as a junior, because I knew if I could do it as a junior, I could do even better next year. So from that junior season to senior season, our friend Austin had actually quit wrestling. He just decided it wasn't something he wanted to do anymore. It just wasn't for him anymore. So he actually quit. So out of those 2 people, Spencer and Austin, it was really just Spencer and I left. But also during that junior to senior year summer, Spencer and I actually decided to go to this 12-day intensive wrestling camp, which is where you basically wake up at 5 a.m. and until about 8 p.m. that night, you're just having practice almost all day, excluding meals and little breaks in between. But you run a mile before practice, you have a hard practice, you run a mile after, and that was pretty much the schedule for 12 days. So it was very mentally and physically draining. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done up to that point. But it really got us better, and it just showed how much we were actually capable of. So it was a bad experience as far as how I felt, but it was a good experience in perspective. But going into our senior season, like I said, I was planning to at least make it to the state tournament, if not place in it. So I had high expectations for myself. But just to give you a better understanding of what I'll explain later, I really wasn't feeling, I was feeling confident. I still enjoyed wrestling, but I didn't want to do it anymore. I think I was burnt out at that point. It was literally like prior to that 4 years of just practice almost not every day, but pretty much every day, and it was an exhausting 4 years, especially with all the weight cutting we were doing. So mentally, I think I was just exhausted. So our senior season, we all did pretty good. I was placing in tournaments either first, second, or third. I was usually doing pretty good. And as we got closer to the end, you have league finals, you have CIF, and you have Masters and state. So to make it to the next one, you have to take a certain placing in that tournament to move on to the next. So at the end of the season, I placed first in league finals. That's really good, of course. But I didn't feel good about it. It was just like I took first. It was like, I don't know, it was weird. I just didn't feel good about it. So I moved on to the next week, CIF, which is a pretty big tournament in the section that we are in. It's just because a lot of schools meet. It's a very competitive tournament. So I did well. I qualified for the finals, or I made it to the finals, and I was pretty confident going into the finals. I saw the person that I was wrestling, and in wrestling, generally you can tell how good someone is based off like how they carry themselves, what they're wearing. But I think I think my head got too big, and I was just feeling overconfident. And that guy or that opponent actually ended up pinning me in the second period, which is essentially losing in wrestling. So I lost that match. I was upset, but as I mentioned, I was kind of burnt out. So like I almost didn't care to a certain extent. So I was sad that I lost, just because the expectations I had for myself. but I also didn't care at the same time. So after CAF, we have masters, we have a week in between, so we have 4 practices. So I went to practice that Monday, I was still feeling the same, but I was just completely out of it. So Tuesday and Wednesday, I actually didn't even go to practice. I had to go to the library to study for some work that I was doing. So that's when I knew, like, in the back of my head, I would think I imagined myself actually not even wrestling at that tournament, almost just quitting. And you'll see at the end, that's actually, as I already mentioned, that's what happened. But I was just completely burnt out. So the day before, my friend Austin and I, the one who I had mentioned who had quit wrestling, we were in class, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go get a tattoo after class?" So we literally went to the tattoo shop, got a tattoo, something that we both knew that we wanted. And I was just kind of explaining to him, like, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling. I don't want to continue anymore. I'm kind of just done." And something that I don't fully understand, he understood how I felt, and he kind of agreed with it, and he wasn't talking me out of it. He was like, like, he was kind of supporting my decision. And I don't know if that was a good thing, like him just trying to comfort me, or what the situation was, but essentially he agreed with my decision. So that night, he actually went and bought me we got some pizza together. And then anyone that knows wrestling, typically you have to make a certain weight. So the weight I was wrestling was 132. So me eating some pizza is not going to benefit me at all, considering I had to make weight the next day. So considering I hadn't gone to practice that week, and then I was going to eat some pizza that night, it was just it's not a good combination for making weight the next day. So at that point, I had already made my decision that I wasn't going to wrestle. I didn't tell anyone except Austin. And then the following day, the day of Masters, I didn't go, I didn't show up, so I was getting texts from my coaches, my teammates, "Where are you at?" And part of me, I just didn't have it in me to tell them that I quit. At a certain point in the day, they knew, but I just didn't have it in me to tell them that I quit. So it also turns out that we actually were going to Knott's Berry Farm that day. So while everyone was texting me all like, "Where are you at?" this, and that, I was actually at an amusement park having fun with some of my friends. So we were having fun, but in the back of my mind, I just knew that I'd done something wrong, and which I did, in my opinion. I'd given up on something that I'd worked for almost 4 years. So it's in perspective, it is pretty sad, in my opinion. But as far as what I've learned, I will never give up on something that I've put that much effort or that much time or money. I just won't give up on something that I care about. And I think that we should all reflect, if we're ever feeling like we're gonna quit on something, just remember why we started it, why we care about it. If it's not beneficial for you, then and you need to quit something, then that's understandable. But if it's something that you care about, I think we should all reflect before we make big decisions like that.